Oh, yeah. On even. Okay, great.
All right, I'd like to call to order this special meeting of the Encinitas City Council on Wednesday, April 12th, 2023 at 4:01 PM. And would the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Blackwell.
Here. Here.
Councilmember Ehlers.
Here.
Councilmember Hensy.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Lyons.
Here.
Mayor Kranz.
Here.
Let the record show all members of the council are present today.
All right, and today we have a translator, and if you'd like to get up and make your announcements.
Good evening, members of the council, everybody. Buenas noches a todos. Mi nombre es Ana Nava Colín, soy traductora certificada y esta noche estoy aquí para traducir e interpretar al español el asunto 1, la actualización acerca de la implementación del Plan de Acción para Personas sin Hogar. Si ustedes desean hacer un comentario público, por favor entreguen una hoja rosa de speaker slip al clerk. Todos los miembros del público que quieran escuchar la traducción al español pueden hacerlo desde esta sala o desde sus hogares, marcando el número de teléfono 425-436-6334. El código de acceso es 1651745. Por favor, al entrar a la llamada de conferencia, asegúrense de poner su teléfono en silencio, mute, para que la traducción se lleve a cabo sin interrupciones. Gracias. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And for tonight's meeting, we have one agenda item, and it is a status update regarding the implementation of the Homeless Action Plan. And I asked to convene this meeting and have this topic because we have recently passed the 2-year anniversary of adopting a Homeless Action Plan. We've had the Safe Parking Program in our city for over 3 years. And I just think it's a good time to check in, and we have a new council, so give everybody an opportunity to ask questions, including the public, do our best to dispel myths, and point out some of the successes and some of the challenges that we have with the ongoing Homeless Action Plan implementation. So with that, I will hand it off to our Director of Development Services, Royce Powell.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor, council members, community members that are with us today. Good afternoon. So today we're here to, as you stated, Honorable Mayor, that we're here to provide you an update of our Homeless Action Plan. Our focus today is to present to you staff's efforts in implementing the Homeless Action Plan. What we'll not discuss today is we're not going to discuss the different partners, community partners that we have in supporting us and helping us with services and programs to supplement our efforts in not only implementing our Homeless Action Plan, but to support our homeless population. That conversation and discussion will be at a future meeting. But today, we will focus on our efforts in implementing the Homeless Action Plan.
Can I reinforce what you're saying here, which is that this is going to be a continuing conversation. We're kicking off with a focus on the Homeless Action Plan, and details about some of the elements of the plan will come at future council meetings.
That is correct. It's going to be an ongoing conversation. This is the first of many conversations that we will have with the City Council and the community on our ongoing efforts in implementing our Homeless Action Plan. So tonight, here's a brief, or the agenda for today's presentation. We're going to provide an overview of our Homeless Action Plan, the effort that the City Council went through with the community in developing and approving our Homeless Action Plan. We're going to provide an overview of the outcomes of our efforts in implementing the Homeless Action Plan between the period of February of 2021 and February of 2023. And we're going to also focus on the outreach efforts that we've implemented to continue engaging our community, to support our efforts in addressing the homelessness issues here in our community. And we're going to focus on some of the ongoing efforts that we're focusing on, not only to implement our Homeless Action Plan as approved, but to enhance it and identify ways to improve our Homeless Action Plan moving forward. And then we're going to share some good news about some of the funding sources that we received to help fund some of the efforts that we need in order to be successful in implementing our Homeless Action Plan. So before we start with the presentation, I would like to introduce our Homeless Solutions Manager. Unfortunately, due to medical reasons, that he was not able to attend tonight's meeting, but he wishes he was here. Unfortunately, due to, as you're aware of our COVID protocols, that he is not allowed to be present here in the City Council chambers. But it's important that I share with you his experience and how critical this person is in not only our organization, but as far as implementing our Homeless Action Plan and addressing homelessness issues in our community. So Stephen Gonzalez comes to us from the County of San Diego. He was with the County of San Diego as a social worker for 7 years. He was the original member of our HOPE team that we will touch on later on in the presentation, that he's a social worker. He was our first social worker with the county, partnering with the city through the HOPE team. As the Homeless Solutions Manager, Stephen will manage, he manages and coordinates homeless programs and services, not only programs that the city provides, but programs and services that are provided by our partners. Stephen is critical in responding to, with the HOPE team, to concerns and issues that come to us, that are existing in our community, whether it's an encampment or a person experiencing homelessness. Stephen is critical in one of our key staff that respond to those inquiries. Stephen also participates in regional efforts and meetings and discussions around this topic of homelessness. And that is critical because that's through those conversations and meetings that we can identify additional resources, not only at the state level, but also at the county level that is available to the city to support our efforts with homelessness. Stephen's also, his role is to establish and maintain partnership with local agencies as well as community partners to just continue supporting our efforts in addressing homelessness in our community. And last but definitely not least, which is today's topic, and that is Stephen's role is critical in implementing our Homeless Action Plan. And I would be remiss if I don't share this about Stephen, and that is his passion and his commitment to this line of work. I think for those of you and also the community members that have met Stephen, that he is truly special in the sense of what he does and his empathy and his passion and care for those who are experiencing homelessness, that he truly cares about these folks and he wants to help them and make sure that they get the services that they need. So I would be remiss if I didn't mention that, and I wish he was here to share that and express that personally, his passion for this line of work. So with that, I will turn it over to Melinda Dacey. Melinda Dacey was overseeing the homeless section in our department before Stephen joined us. So I just want to thank Melinda for stepping in and taking over the presentation to cover for Stephen while he's out. So with that, I'll turn it over to Melinda to give our presentation.
Thank you, Roy. Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, council members, and members of the public. Thank you for being here tonight. We are giving you an update on the Homeless Action Plan and our implementation efforts to date. So with that, the City Council had adopted our Homeless Action Plan in February of 2021. The Homeless Action Plan is organized into 3 main parts, which include the needs of those experiencing homelessness within the city, addressing homelessness in Encinitas, and the Homeless Action Plan goals and action steps are included within the Homeless Action Plan. And the purpose of the action plan is to also understand the needs of those experiencing homelessness and current efforts within the community. This is also a part of the City Council's strategic priorities at their strategic planning workshop that was held earlier this year. City Council identified one of their priorities is to utilize our Homeless Solutions Manager to explore solutions for homelessness and the unhoused within the community. So the HAP has 4 main focus areas, which include the needs of the individuals and families experiencing homelessness in Encinitas, to assess the city's efforts to address homelessness and provide recommendations, to ensure the safety and welfare of unsheltered neighbors, residents, and businesses, as well as identify, develop, and improve homeless services and partnerships within the community. We also wanted to point out that this is a complex issue that is complicated and requires the focused coordination with community partners, resources, and strategies. And part of the goals for the HAP include to increase city and community capacity to end homelessness, which is to develop a collaborative, community-driven approach, to decrease the number of people experiencing homelessness, use person-based homeless response and supportive housing services systems, and increase housing availability, which is through temporary and permanent housing opportunities. And so, who has the HAP served since February of 2021? So this is cumulative data from February of 2021, which is when the HAP was adopted, up until 2023 of this year. And out of 589 people experiencing homelessness, those are who the city has made contact with within those 2-year period. And it is not representative of the point in time count. 149 people, individuals experiencing homelessness have been housed. Of those 149, 19 had returned to homelessness, which is the 13% of the total population of those who have been housed. Some of our outreach services include the Homeless Outreach Program for Empowerment, which is what we call the HOPE team, which is a collaborative team consisting of city departments, a county social worker, contract case management and outreach worker, as well as partnering with the sheriff's deputies and additional city facilities and departments such as Parks and Rec, Public Works, and our code enforcement team, as well as the fire department. And so the contract case manager that we have funded is through the McAllister Institute. And with that program specifically, it was CDBG COVID-19 funded. And they, since we had a contract with them in November of 2021, have had 291 contacts with persons experiencing homelessness. And that number is included within the 589 on the prior slide. So how do we handle any kind of homelessness-related requests that come into the city? So the city, we would receive any kind of inquiry through email, phone call, through the My Encinitas app, and with that, we would send out the information to the HOPE team, specifically with information regarding the details of the person that may be experiencing homelessness, their location, map location, any kind of identifying information that would be helpful for the HOPE team to conduct any kind of outreach with that individual that is experiencing homelessness. And all the requests lead to the HOPE team, and the HOPE team is our boots on the ground team that provides the outreach services to the community and members in need. We also want to indicate that the My Encinitas app is the best way to get a request submitted to the city, and this is so that you get a more timely response. Email or phone call, there may be a little bit of a delay in getting the HOPE team notified to go out and address the need that's been identified. And what happens when you submit a request through the app is that you receive an email notification that the request was received. The HOPE team is automatically notified of the issue and the location. And we also follow up with some resolution emails regarding the status of the person that was in need of services and provide a status update to the person that is reporting the issue or concern. So the homeless action plan itself, we're going to go over the implementation status of each of the action items within the homeless action plan. So the first goal of the homeless action plan is to increase the capacity of the city and the community to end homelessness. So the first action item is to establish a set of community-driven actions and tasks to address homelessness. That was completed, which is the homeless action plan. That document itself identifies what those actions are. To establish a homeless solutions manager to coordinate and manage homeless services in Encinitas is 100% complete with hiring of Stephen. We also had some staff interim in between his appointment. We are also 100% complete on establishing working groups. So the city has 2 different working groups that we currently have in place, which is an internal working group with city staff departments and the HOPE team to coordinate on our responses to homelessness inquiries and encampments and come up with procedures and policies on how we need to handle those and what the best practices are for that. In addition, we have a community working group, which is consistent of city staff, of course, and our community-based organizations such as Interfaith, some of our Scripps hospitals also included in that, and other Coast Highway 101 organizations and other community-based organizations also partner with the city in that group. Action 4 is to identify, collect, and utilize data to inform decisions. So we have the My Encinitas app, and we also get information from the County Office of Homeless Solutions through their Homeless Management Information System, which is HMIS. And so we are in progress with collecting our data, coordinating efforts with them on getting input and information to them on data needs that the city has specifically. The second goal of the HAP is to decrease the number of individuals experiencing homelessness through demand-driven, person-based homeless response and supportive housing services system. So the first action item is 75% complete, and that is to ensure that outreach is empathetic to the condition of those experiencing homelessness and that their basic needs are provided. So the city does have partners with the community. McAllister Institute provides our local Encinitas case management, as well as providing some of those mental health services that are needed when interacting with some of the individuals in the community. Number 2 is to enhance interim housing system capacity based on agreed upon standards for the operation of emergency shelters that reflect national best practices. So that is 75% complete as well. Some of those interim housing capacities are emergency shelter network with Interfaith. We have the safe parking program that has been in place for several years now and that has been relocated to the Encinitas Community and Senior Center. And we are also looking into additional opportunities to expand and increase the capacity. And we'll go over a little bit of that in further slides. We are also looking at enhancing healthcare services for persons experiencing homelessness. So the McAllister Institute contract that we have with them, they help provide the outreach efforts and some of those services that are needed. Additionally, we look to develop measures to address city's approach to homelessness. This is 75% complete. And part of this is getting that data through the My Encinitas app as well to, ensure that we are providing the services in a timely manner and identifying any kind of gaps in service as well. So goal 3 is to increase the availability of temporary and permanent housing. So we are about 75% complete with action item 1, which is to develop strategies to maximize existing housing stock and potential housing resources. So we are looking into incorporating some additional resources through outreach efforts and community partnerships. And Stephen's really been taking the charge on kind of getting more of this in process and initiated. So we just started working on this work effort this year. So the second item has not been started yet. It was identified in the Homeless Action Plan to occur within 2024 to 2026, and that is to partner with our city's housing authority to kind of explore different strategies or alternatives for housing choice vouchers or another type of program to kind of provide some type of housing resource for those who are experiencing homelessness to get them housed in a more rapid way. And then to develop options to expand the number of year-round shelter beds. We are also exploring options for that as well. And Stephen's been really great at doing outreach and making connections in the community to identify those types of locations.
If I could, I'd like to add, to touch on number 2, action item number 2, I just want to share with the council and the community that this is something that we're coordinating with the city of Carlsbad. This is something that they were able to do with their admin plan, and that's something that we're looking into and see if we can leverage their efforts to and adopt or a similar path that they took for us to be able to implement this action item.
So some of our next steps that we're working on, we're going to continue to meet on a quarterly basis with our internal working group, which I mentioned earlier was comprised of a bunch of city departments as well as the HOPE team. And we're going to meet quarterly and identify any kind of needs and services for that working group. External community working group, Stephen is looking at expanding those who participate in the group. They're going to meet on a quarterly basis and get those meetings scheduled again. The North County City Collaborative is a new program that we're looking at incorporating to comprise of North County coastal cities. And this is designed in a way to bring those cities together to share resources and strategies and solutions to address homelessness. There are other regional working groups that do meet, but this group is going to be specifically focused that Stephen is working on coordinating these. The Public Health and Safety Commission would be a new program, and it's coming forward to City Council at a future meeting date for the consideration of the Equity Committee recommendation to establish this new commission. So goal 2 would be the coordination of cares and services. So one of the new items is to partner with Scripps Hospital and coordinate with the city on when persons experiencing homelessness may be discharged from the hospital and kind of, meet with them out there when that happens so that if there are any services that those people need, that they are able to obtain and be given those services. Another new item is a partnership with the Village Square Health Care Center, which is a skilled nursing facility. And that skilled nursing facility would provide social workers as additional homeless outreach for assessments for the senior population with those having chronic and severe medical issues. Another new program is to obtain some recuperative care beds. So beds that are reserved exclusively for the city of Encinitas homeless population to provide care post-discharge or divert from the hospital. So those that are potentially being discharged from Scripps could have a place within these recuperative care beds. That's kind of the idea behind that one. And the mental health care and substance abuse service provider would also be new. So we're looking to contract with a provider who will do assessments, screenings, and crisis intervention with persons experiencing homelessness for behavioral health or substance-related crises, as well as providing some mobile outreach to get some more outreach out there, meeting them where they're at in the community and getting them the services that they need and assessments that are needed as well. An additional expansion for Goal 3 would be to develop a transitional housing project. So Stephen's been looking into this to have a housing solution that can shelter up to 24 individuals. The location is in an unincorporated North County areas where we're currently looking, and also to get some more money funding for temporary housing vouchers. So those would be to provide vouchers for temporary or rapid rehousing options. And this could be throughout the North County, not necessarily within the city itself. And so the funding updates we had brought to the City Council back in November, the Permanent Local Housing Allocation Grant. This grant gives the city a funding opportunity that is potentially ongoing, provided that the city maintains it requires and the city has to maintain a certified housing element to qualify to apply for this grant funding. We just received word yesterday that we got the award for the grant amount that we applied for, which is $665,000. And it's a 5-year funding estimate of about $936,000. And so with that money, we can utilize it to expand our homeless services to the community and get some more funding opportunities out there to increase bed capacity, the rapid rehousing vouchers, those types of programs, and getting additional case managers out to help with our community and the population.
So that concludes staff's presentation, but I want to leave you with this, something that Stephen reminds me every day in what he does, and that is behind the numbers that you've seen today, that those are people, that lives are changing because of the services that the council and the community provides to support them and making services accessible to them. So I just want to share that and leave that with you. Also today we have our captain, Captain Lawrence, as well as our planning manager, Anders, joining us should you have any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for the reminder about the numbers equaling real people experiencing real trauma. With that, though, I'd like to go back to the slide that had the numbers on it, so I can make sure it's clear. Of those 589 people, it isn't that you can subtract 149 that have been housed, and that's how many homeless people we have here. That's the number of people that have had contact with services in the city, and they may or may not still be in the city. They may have gone to Carlsbad or to Oceanside, but the exact number of homeless folks currently is less than that. Is that accurate?
That is correct. This number 589 is the touch points that our HOPE team made during the period of February of 2021 to February of 2023.
Okay, so a couple of years. All right. Thank you. Preliminary questions, Councilmember Ehlers?
Can you go to the PHLA slide and maybe the slide before that? I had a couple of questions just to understand that better. So this is, well, let's go to the one prior to that. And my first question is, these two new, are these low barrier, high barrier? When I looked at the report and read through all the existing housing beds options we have, they seem to all be high barrier. And so my first question is, what are these?
The transitional housing would be low barrier.
So these are both low barrier, which is what we need. And on to the next one on the PHLA. This is a California HUD Sorry, is this federal HUD money or California money?
California HCD
Okay,
program.
so I know the report said that California money, it has to be for low barrier only. Is this earmarked only for low barrier type of shelter?
No, it's for those who are specifically experiencing homelessness. So it's very broad, and we can utilize the funds to meet the specific categories within that.
Okay, appreciate it. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Lyons.
Thank you, Mayor Kranz. Just one more question about the numbers. So if we're identifying 589 people, and you're saying that's just Hope Team, how does that include what the Sheriff's Department, their contacts are? So I guess my question is, maybe back up a little bit. If the sheriff is the first to engage with a homeless person or an encampment, does the Hope Team then get called? What's the relationship there between how the Hope Team, how this number of people is attributed to the Hope Team and how the sheriff engages?
So the sheriff has a deputy that participates in the Hope Team program, and they go out together to provide resources and make contact with the individuals. Deputy Lawrence, if you want to expand on that.
That is correct. We have 4 deputies that are now on the Hope Team. We've expanded it just to provide more services throughout a broader time period during the day itself, more hours in the day and more days during the week. So, but Melinda is correct in the sense that the teams are working together and the information is shared.
Great. Another question associated with that relationship. You mentioned that my Encinitas app is the quickest way to get a response to an incident or a concern or identification of a situation. Is that because it is a 24/7 response connection? I know the reason for email and phone is because the City Hall is not always open. So could you clarify why that's the best way to go a little bit?
Yeah, it is available 24/7, and we do have specific categories built into the app. So, for example, if a person experiencing homelessness is in a park or beach, that notification would also go directly to the Parks and Recs department to notify their staff that there may be somebody experiencing homelessness within a city park, and that they can get resources that they need out there too, especially if it's an encampment that needs some kind of cleanup or something like that.
Another question associated with that is the 24/7 capability of the My Encinitas app. Is that primarily because the Hope Team and the sheriff are 24/7 active entities? If it gets forwarded to Parks and Rec is not a 24/7. We don't have anyone dedicated 24/7 to these issues here in the city. Could you help clarify that?
No, if a report comes in over the weekend, the city wouldn't necessarily respond to it until the next working day. However, the sheriff's department is copied on those correspondence that come through the My Encinitas app, and they may be able to put resources out there and make contact over the weekend or in the evening hours when city staff may not necessarily be around.
Thank you. I like that because I think it's a more streamlined way to get the information to those who are in an immediately available to respond if needed. So I think that helps a lot. I'm happy to see that we've made that change. And my only other clarification question is about the data we keep. I know that we talk a lot about being data-driven. We talk a lot about what are our numbers associated with homelessness. You've presented some numbers today. Do we have a database of who we're connecting with, whether some people have ongoing homelessness issues? I understand you've presented some kind of high-level numbers today. How deep does our data collection go about what we know about our people who are homeless?
It can be pretty detailed. We were reporting on the individuals, but part of the information that does get recorded when the case managers and social outreach workers do make contact with persons experiencing homelessness, they do document, if they're part of a household. So we have information regarding if it's more than one person experiencing homelessness that consider themselves a household versus the individuals individuals is each person that's included within that category, as well as the county system for the homeless management information system that is offered by the County Office of Homeless Solutions. They maintain a database as well that all of the social workers outreach work gets reported into that HMIS system, and then that information does get reported back out to us.
Good, thank you.
A follow-up on that for the captain. The ride-along that I was on last summer, there were several homeless folks that the deputy made contact with, but if they weren't threatening, there was no real action taken. Is there, what sort of protocol, what are the standard operating procedures that a deputy operates under when they have contact with a homeless person? And for example, does it end up in the HMIS system, or is it reported to the HOPE team deputies? How does that work?
That's a great question. It ultimately depends on how the call for service comes in, what type of call it is, whether it's a suspicious person call with just a general description of abnormal behavior, or if it's an actual crime that's being committed and reported upon. So the deputies will go and triage to say what type of behavior they're dealing with. Are we dealing with a criminal element that we need to take law enforcement action towards, or are we dealing with a mental health type situation, or are we dealing with strictly an unhoused situation? And so we have the ability to complete what are called field interviews. Those can be done in the field or after the fact, and those field interviews are, if they're not created by someone on the HOPE team, they're forwarded to deputies that are on the HOPE team, and then that information is later shared with Stephen and other members of the HOPE team to make sure that the social workers are put in contact with these individuals.
If it's somebody that's unhoused, we know that it's not healthy for him to be sleeping on a park bench, and we make contact with them and offer them whatever services that we have, or is that something that the deputy does engage at that level, or do we wait for the social workers to take those actions?
The deputies can engage at that level. There are resources available for deputies to reach out to social workers that are available at all times. Some of the things that we have experienced within the last year, though, is the limitation on resources that are available by the county even. So some of the emergency housing that has not been available to individuals at a immediate basis. Many of these individuals are on wait lists, or they have to wait a couple days for resources to become available. So I know that's one of the things that the HOPE team and your city staff has been working on, to make a more immediacy of those resources becoming available, and I think we're pretty close.
And then there are also situations when people might, even if there were shelter opportunities, they would refuse those services. And I believe it's Martin v. Boise that then we operate under. We have to have some shelter to provide in order to remove them from the public space.
That is correct. Actually, it was a Ninth Court decision in 2019, Martin v. Boise. What it essentially says at its most basic is that a city cannot enforce anti-camping ordinances if they don't have a homeless shelter readily available. So that comes into play with illegal lodging, 647E of the Penal Code. If somebody sets up a tent or other equipment that would appear to be a residence, a makeshift residence out in public lands. So yes, if those shelters are unavailable, that prohibits us from taking enforcement action. And so we encourage those individuals to move along to other areas, to communicate with other cities that may have those resources available, or to communicate with the county for those emergency vouchers. But again, those resources are not always available because they are in high demand and there are a limited number of them.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Ehlers?
Yeah, just keeping with quantitative data, on page 45 of the homeless action plan, I don't know if you can bring up the graphs there. It's the point in time trends broken down by city. Now, granted, this is 2 years ago. I'll give you a minute to bring that up. I thought this was very good information to see because it covers all of North County. It's got it broken down by cities, including ours. And we see right there a 4-year, 5-year trend. And there we go. There's that, and then there's one right below that. So first question is, could we get this as part of future action plan updates? Could we get this as a great chart, get both of these updated with the 2021? And I know I believe we're going to be getting the 2022 here shortly, like in the next month or two. I would love to see this all together. So first question.
Yeah, so I believe that 2021 hit count didn't happen because of COVID.
Okay.
But we do have the 2022 data, and what the count that just took place would be for 2023. And we don't anticipate getting that information from the county until May or June of this year.
Okay, so the 2020 I'm looking at here was taken actually towards the end of 2019 or something? It's even older than I thought.
It'd be the beginning of the calendar year, so the point in time count occurs January of every year.
Okay, so I can think of that as January 2020. Okay, great. So then I had a couple of questions. First of all, it looks like Escondido there. Am I seeing that right? The light blue dash dot dash dot. How did they achieve zero? or darn close to zero? It looks like they went from over 100 to less than 10. Do we know what they did to?
That would be San Marcos. I don't know if maybe they have different shelter capacity within their community to assist with getting that number so low.
But I think that would be something, I'd like to see the success strategies that are working in our region. And by the same token, what did Vista do? Vista went from several years of 400 to 500 suddenly down to 100. So, I think that would be helpful for us to understand what they're doing and then track these charts going forward with all of the local agencies. And I think that's what I'm looking for, that kind of information. I think this is the highest level. I understand point in time is just that. It's a point in time, and it's not necessarily all homeless, but it is one of the leading key metrics we've chosen to track. And so that.
Yeah, and we can definitely do that. The point in time count for each jurisdiction is reported on the county's regional task force on homelessness. That data is out there.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Councilmember Blackwell.
Yes, thank you. Can you go back to the slide, shifting around, back to the slide with goal 1 and the actions you're taking? I think it's towards the end of the presentation. Yeah, there you go. Oh, maybe it was goal 2, sorry. No, it was where there it is, there it is. So thank you again for the presentation. It's really good to see all this, and having that data was really helpful. As we heard from members of the community at large, there does feel like we could be more transparent with some of our data. But I think when you look at community capacity building, these working groups are really good. I happen to be part of number 2 for a short while, and then it sort of faded away. But it would be great to see that started again relatively soon. I also really liked the idea of the North County City Collaborative. Is that something that is actually going to happen, or is it an idea we're floating with other coastal cities?
I know we've had discussions with the other coastal cities, and they are open to collaborating and being part of this group to provide and discuss kind of services and solutions for the area.
That's great. And then one thing I didn't notice in the materials was any conversation about county involvement, right? Or maybe that was intentional. It was really focused on our plan and what we're doing, but could you just comment on that, perhaps?
The county is involved. The HOPE team does have a county social worker that does work with us. In regards to some of the other working groups that are currently together that we do participate in as well. There is a North County group that includes all of the North County cities, and that's usually set up by the Regional Task Force on Homelessness, which is the county's continuum of care for the region.
Thank you, appreciate it. I'll just close with a comment just to say, one of my observations from being part of that external community work group was that there are a lot of people doing a lot in this area to help homeless. But there did seem to be, my observation, a lack of that coordination of how do we all get the oars rowing in the same direction, right? And there'd be so much more power with that. And also that homeless is not a unique problem to Encinitas. It's a regional and county and broader issue. So I'm glad to see this slide and the actions there. Thanks.
Yes, and my goal is to have a meeting agendized that includes a more robust conversation about the county's role in our efforts to reduce homelessness. They are the organization that receives a lot of money from the state. They have the Department of Health and Human Services, and it's important that they are thoroughly engaged. Now, we did hire Stephen from the county, and they have a social worker. I don't know if there's a new social worker that's been assigned to the HOPE team. And the question is whether we need more social workers for additional HOPE teams, that we could expand the number of hours that people are out and making contact with homeless folks. But that's a conversation that we intend to have at another date. Councilmember Hensy.
Yeah, just taking up that topic, I do want to acknowledge Stephen and the tremendous brain trust that he provides to our city, and the fact that he has done so much in the time that he's been here is really evident in this presentation. So Stephen, if you're listening, we're grateful. Please don't go anywhere. Stick with us for a while. But there's still a lot of work to do, obviously, and I think he's shown us what happens when you understand how the county works and how you can leverage things. And to me, that's what we've achieved through the HOPE team, which was a partnership. We asked for things, we knew what we wanted, and we've been able to stay true to that vision. And Stephen, because of the trust that he builds, can successfully house people who might have refused other offers from faces that they don't know or trust or understand what they're going through. So I just had one question and then a few comments. How many public speakers do we have? I'm just curious.
We have 4.
Oh, okay. So we'll have lots of time to discuss. So just a question. We've had a lot of inclement weather this year at the end of last year. And when that happens, I notice how many people are living on our streets unsheltered. And is it fair to assume that the people I see have been offered shelter and declined when it's raining? Or is there really no place for them to go when it's storming and raining and we're having these really high winds?
I wouldn't be able to know how to respond to that without necessarily having our outreach workers here and knowing what the individuals are that you have seen, so they know who they've spoken to and offered services to, and if those offers of services were refused or not.
I see. I think just as we continue to develop this plan, because I brought this question up now, I'll just say, when it is raining like that, when we are having storms like that, I think it's important at the very least to offer transportation and say, is there somewhere that we can take you? Because the picture changes at that time when somebody who might have offered or rejected services prior is now cold and wet and there isn't a place for them to go. So I hope that we can put some of our efforts towards filling that gap. But that's it for now.
Okay, those were the preliminary questions. So now we would like to hear from public speakers.
I'll call you up 3 at a time, and just a reminder, you have 3 minutes. First 3 speakers, Donna Westbrook, followed by Steve Gherkin and Carol Serling.
Donna Westbrook, Encinitas. You should give accolades to Senator Toni Atkins. She's the senator, for San Diego, to her wife. She was the one that wrote the Encinitas Homeless Action Plan. So every time you discuss this, give her credit because I'm not sure that it's being used in San Diego. Maybe it is. But really, if you look back and you're all saying it's a regional problem. It's not an Encinitas problem. Granted, we have some, but it's not an Encinitas problem per se. It's a regional. And the worst thing you can do is to think that you're going to fix homelessness because it's just in this little realm of which you are the creators. And what happens is that when the money dries up, you're left with the bigger problem. So instead of putting your efforts towards doing something in Encinitas, do it with the county. The county can fix things and can put things together. And if you don't do it that way, you're going to end up with something drying up and with it all being a bigger problem than what it was. The county they have the money. They may not have all the money, but they have money. They can get more money. They're also, let's say, on the list for the care of whatever, continuum or whatever it's called. They do have a regional task force. And all of this can be done by them. Have you looked into it? I haven't seen that happen. You took the car problem as far as sleeping in the cars has now been switched over to the community center. But that was based on the regional task force. Didn't have anything with what you were doing. They were getting their money from the state or from the county, and then the county got it from the state. So if you want to do something, start dialogue with the county. And let's not start this, we're going to have shelters in the hotels. No one will have to know about it. We're going to have shelters in underused houses someplace. You know, it's not really a good idea. It's a plan that gets bigger. It doesn't get smaller. You've already hired a homeless manager. How many more are you going to have in that department? It's a question of where do you put your resources, and we don't really have those resources, and it's a question of who has the ability to start it rolling, and it's already been rolling by the county. So put your emphasis on that. Please do not continue with this. Thank you.
I get a time handicap. Mayor, Deputy Mayor, Council, I'm Steve Gerken from Encinitas. I'd like to comment on the update regarding the implementation of the Homeless Action Plan. And I'd like to ask the Council to pause the advancement of this draft proposal for the staff report at this time, and for the following reasons. The draft is incomplete and premature. Why? There's no new data on homelessness provided since 2021, even though 2022 counts are available. 2023 data is available in just a few weeks. Why aren't we using the only reliable information source available to us? There are actionable items, but there's no budget. There's no analysis of this year's and multi-year financial impacts. I say no financial planning, no budget. Draft plans call for building infrastructure to meet needs. Homelessness in Encinitas has been declining for the past 4 years, according to available data. So what's the demand, and what budget are we forecasting for? The City Council, I hope, would hold a series of citywide town hall meetings for residents and businesses on homelessness. 2018 was the last time a town hall meeting was held. It's 2023 and it's time. The city has spent almost $5 million on housing and homelessness based on public records requests since 2020. And we just saw we now have 4 sheriff's deputies participating on the HOPE team. And I realized no one ever looked at the emergency medical responders or fire department budgets and how they're being used and how much is going into the homeless effort. So what did that $5 million accomplish? I didn't see it in the report. The city now has 7 employees costing over $1 million annually that was gotten by public records requests that are working on housing and homelessness because those two issues are interconnected. So I ask, is this the best use of our tax money, serving 65 so far identified homeless when the Mobile Action Plan and Vision Zero Plan, which serve every resident, visitor, and business, go unfunded? I think you should ask the entire community, just not the 2 working groups that you consider the community. I'd like the council to take input from residents and visitors and businesses on the homeless issues. Ask them what their spending priorities are. Ask them, are we going to try and solve homeless in Encinitas, regionally, or both, as Donna just asked? What are we going to accomplish? How are we going to measure that? You know, you get what you measure, so let's measure it. Do our actions interfere with the goals of reducing homelessness? CRC proposed growing its homeless meals to 5,000 a year. So who are we feeding? And where are the extra 1,500 demands for meals coming from? Are we attracting homelessness? Case report manager reports 591 cases in 2021 who are counseled for drug and alcohol services. Who are those people? The Safe Parking Program shelter was marketed as a safe place for Encinitas residents. Yet just 3 of the 25 sheltering for the past few years are Encinitas residents. So who are we sheltering? Not Encinitans. I'm out of time. So I would just say that I think there's a lot of unanswered questions before you move ahead. I think you should expose this out to the bigger, broader community where we can have dialogue rather than just these monologues with each other. And I think that one homeless meeting that we had where over 100 people attended will show you that there's a lot of people very interested in this topic.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Carol Serling from Cardiff, and I'm here tonight to speak for a lot of my friends and neighbors in Cardiff. And regarding this homeless program implementation, we believe that we really need to slow this process down. I was surprised to hear how long this has actually been progressing tonight, but we believe that this homeless action plan needs to have more businesses and more citizens involved. And if you just look around at how sparse the attendance is here tonight, obviously the word about this meeting did not get very widely distributed. And in fact, I understand that only today were Main Street associations in the chamber notified of today's meeting. So there wasn't a lot of opportunity. So I only want to echo some of the things the 2 other speakers said. I almost feel like I don't need to say much beyond that because I agree with much of what they said. But I would very much like to see a better advertised announcement so that residents and business owners of Encinitas can attend and have more of an open forum where questions can be asked and answered, because these are proposals that are going to impact people to a great degree. And we need to be dealing with this with people's awareness and input and questions. So I really request that you schedule something for the near future and really make it obvious and announced to the wider public so that people can really come and have a forum and a discussion. I'm concerned, and my friends are concerned, that Encinitas, which is a small beach town already and obviously getting more and more crowded all the time, may become a magnet city for more homeless people, especially if we begin to build housing and double the capacity of the existing Jewish Family Services safe parking lot for homeless individuals living in their cars. So anyway, there's just a lot that needs to be answered still. It seems like we're kind of moving forward, and a lot of the questions about the budgeting and the areas where all these services are offered needs to be more understood and clear to people who may have questions. And so I don't think Encinitas needs to be providing necessarily additional services. We already have CRC, and I still agree with the gentleman who said it needs to be a regional. I mean, the gal who had spoke first, talking about it being a regional issue. I would like to see more of an emphasis on that. And it should be centralized more for the region rather than each individual, beach town city taking on its portion, even though I understand the idea coordinating is important. Lastly, just one thing, you all know the movie that we love so much, Field of Dreams, and that great statement that says, if you build it, they will come. And I'm concerned that if we keep building, we're just going to make our little town even more crowded. I'm not against people getting services. I just want to have a different approach, maybe made possible by the people understanding
Thank
better
you.
what we need to do.
Thank
Thank you.
Final two speakers, Sheila Cameron, followed by Elena Thompson with a time donation from John Thompson.
Feels alive. Okay, Sheila Cameron, Leucadia. Mayor Kranz, Encinitas council members, your agenda states that this is an informational report and with no fiscal impact, so no decisions can be made today to spend money that we do not have. Originally, the Community Development Block Grant funds were for community groups who were awarded $500, $1,000, $2,000, small amounts to aid them in projects within their organizations that would help enhance life in Encinitas. Since about 2017, apparently, HUD, a national organization, is in charge of CDBG funds, and the focus is on housing and the homeless. We have other budget lines set aside for those subjects, don't we? I don't know how this happened. Why did we become a city in 1986? Because we wanted to decide how we would grow and develop for ourselves to get out from under the yoke of the county. Well, it seems that the county was the least of our worries. Now the state of California and HUD are determining our fate for us, and you're letting them do it. Do the citizens of this city, who are your constituents, have no local control on anything anymore? Mayor Blakespear and her council invited the homeless increase in population here with a pact with the Jewish Family Services to help them receive a grant. This affected all our local coastal cities, and now here we are with homeless encampments everywhere and bowing down for grant monies and in exchange, swapping out more of our local control for money. In reading the meeting agenda, I see the terms programs and plans being used repeatedly, but I don't see much action or results. A key point on page 4, the city is being selected for a grant, but the council and citizens of the city do not know how much. So why are we having this meeting now when we have no money? Okay, we just found out we got $600,000. To go back to your comment under fiscal considerations at the top of this agenda, it's an information report, does not have a direct physical impact. No physical impacts. Is staff working for nothing on these plans? $5 million have been spent so far of our taxpayers' money. That's all our taxpayers' money. You cannot enter into any contracts or spend any monies until you find out how much money you are selling our city soul for. The other thing is, frankly, that it said in here that this money goes back to 2019, so that's like 5 years already that you're spreading this money out on. You got the 600,000, but you're talking about a total of 935,000. What happened? How did you spend $5 million? You want to get 935,000 coming in? I don't know. And you add the deputy costs and everything else that's going on. I think you should really give us a report that shows all the details, like the lady said, both those ladies. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Elena Thompson. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm a resident of Encinitas for 35 years, and I'm here because I want to help you reach the right decision. These are huge decisions, how we take this homeless topic on and what path we travel down, and it comes with huge financial responsibility for our tiny city of 63,000 people. Now, we talked about the number of 589 people in 2 years being helped, and I think that's commendable that they were helped, and I hope they're really doing much better. But 589 people over 2 years is 24 people a month. We're in a city of 63,000 people. I'd like to see you all helping the residents of Encinitas as your priority. I do appreciate that you want to help the homeless, and I do too. I think everyone in this town does. We don't like seeing them draped on our sidewalks. I don't enjoy seeing them lying on the ground and chasing me when I'm going out to dinner in downtown Encinitas at night. It's downright scary what's happening. And Mayor, you were attacked. I feel terrible for you. What a horrible thing. Do we want more of this or do we want less of this? And I ask that question because the staff report is proposing to you the expansion of homeless programs. And I think our prior speaker was spot on, because the more we expand these programs, we build it, they will come. We will take on more financial liabilities that we can't afford, and they'll take up the money that I would like to see spent on a sidewalk on La Costa Avenue, but no, it's going to go to a homeless program. Okay, so we have to weigh these trade-offs. And, you know, the staff report, I think, is incorrect, because it says that this has to do with having, the strategic plan calls for having a roof over everyone's head. Really? Really? I've never heard of that. That's page 1 of the staff report. And, you know, this homelessness is not tied to not having a home. Homelessness in some cases is, but it's tied to drug addiction, it's tied to poverty, it's tied to mental illness, it's tied to a lot of things. It's not just about housing. And when I came before you last month on March 15th at your prior meeting on giving away CDBG grants, that's a tough one to say, I was urging you to decouple homelessness from housing. Those are two totally separate segments. They're two totally separate cost centers. People in finance would know that. And the only way we can track our budget is to take these things separately and not confuse them, okay? We have HCD calling out the need for housing. It's completely separate from the homeless question, in my view. But let's go back to the Homeless Action Plan, which is what we're talking about tonight. I think it's a good idea to continue with the community conversation, and I'm grateful to be a part of it, and thank you all for listening again. I think we need to reevaluate the HAP recommended goals and actions. I mean, come on, how can we have goals and actions when we don't even know how many homeless we have? And the count was in January, and we won't have those numbers until, did I hear that right, May or June? I mean, there's no way in the world, if I was in front of a CEO at a company where I used to work for many, they would allow me to make a pitch for money and programs and beds and shelters without having my numbers. We do not have those numbers, so we have to push the pause button here. We have to have the point-in-time numbers before we can proceed. Number 2, we have to evaluate and be clear about what our past spending was. And the gentleman brought up the $5 million. Right or wrong, it's a hell of a lot of money. And if we don't know what we've spent and what our forecast is going forward, that's just irresponsible fiscal management. And again, we want to help you with that. These are big decisions, and we need to know what we're talking about here before we dive in deep. It's unaffordable, basically. Number 3, the regional solutions are really the way to go. So I like that idea, and I think that it's good that Stephen is looking at that. Economies of scale are spot on. We know that as business people. We do not need a shelter in every city. The staff mentioned you're looking for one in the unincorporated areas. That tells me, Mr. Sheriff, that we can take these people in Encinitas to shelter beds in other places. We can take them to Carlsbad. We don't have to build it and have it right here, do we? Good question to look further into. But those regional solutions are really key, because we know that Carlsbad is expanding their homeless shelter La Posada now. Vista's expanding their shelter beds, as is Escondido. This is our North County regional partnership already. So we don't need to take on all these expenses and recreate what's already there, certainly in bigger cities that have a far larger income. Okay, so I'd like to see that our goals here, and it's a nice presentation, but they absolutely have to be tied to reducing and eliminating homelessness. So again, without the numbers and without any goals tied to those numbers saying, let's get it from 100 homeless people a month, which was the homeless count from last year. Let's take those numbers down to 10 homeless people a month. I mean, where are the numbers? And once we have those numbers, we can roll out a revised strategy and plan. And I think that really has to happen, and I'd like to help. Thank you.
Thank you.
That does conclude public speakers on this item, Mayor.
Thank you. Yes, appreciate all the comments, and it reminds me of the group Community Solutions, which was started by Roseanne Haggerty. They refer to homelessness that would meet functional zero, and the reason they don't say zero is because it's a constant issue. It never stops. Every day somebody ends up on the street for some reason or another. So it's something that never ends. And you say we can't afford it, and I say we can't afford not to do this. We have heard from more people about issues related to the homeless on our streets than you can even imagine. And frankly, it's gone down in part because of the investment that we've made. The HOPE team, the system that we have for reporting encampments, these are all tools that have been valuable in addressing this particular issue. So I appreciate and respect your opinions. I think the notion of having robust programs for addressing homelessness is a magnet is just a canard. It's just not the case. And I've done a lot of Googling on this subject, and there is no evidence that says that having a good homeless outreach, homeless action team brings homeless people to our city. So with that, I will call on Deputy Mayor Lyons.
Thank you, Mayor Kranz. We have the opportunity today to give input to our staff, and I want to and you know, this is an informational item. There's no action taken, as was said, but there's input that can be given, and so I look forward to that opportunity here. What the community has said is really important, and I know we're all very passionate and through perhaps slightly different lenses about people who are unhoused. It really is something we have a lot of passion for in our community. And it comes from very different lenses across the whole community. One thing I want to shine a light on is in my district, I've encountered and I've learned about many families who have living situations that are extremely fragile, and especially through the time of COVID and now with the hardships associated with the increase of costs and inflation, we are even more vulnerable than we have been. And a lot of people are struggling. I look at our homelessness situation through the lens of what do our people need who live here? What do our residents need? And also, how can we connect with the county to help solve larger issues on a regional basis? So I think our homeless action plan is aimed at achieving both those goals. I see that our situation will continue to get compounded as there's more economic pressure on our citizens. So that's a whole bigger issue, but I do see it linked to housing and the affordability of our housing and the affordability of everything associated with our cost of living. So unfortunately, I see that there's going to be more pressures over time and more of a need for us to be very active in addressing it in the smartest way possible and to connect with our regional partners. And so I want to reflect on a few things that I heard the public say that I agree with. And one is that this is a regional problem, and we need to engage with the county and our regional partners. I hear us saying that we are doing that, and so I want to encourage us to continue to do that and to leverage the resources of many to work together towards solutions. I would like to see more data, and I think I've heard most people say that today. And I understand that we may not have it today. We are not yet at the point to report on data that's meaningful, but or meaningful to decision making. But I think we should have it, and I hope that we can figure out how to have that for the next time we get together, so we can understand. So there's data. And that data may have to do with what the individual challenges are, what the people challenges are, what the institutional challenges are, but also what the cost is, what the costs have been, and what we project the need for cost or revenue or money. It could be from external sources to help with us to help us with addressing the issues. And making sure that we, in all of our future meetings and across the board, have really good public outreach and advertisement of our meetings so that we feel we're hearing the voices of all of our constituents. So that was some feedback I wanted to emphasize from what I've heard from the public, and thank you for coming to speak today. I have two things I want to follow up with right now, and they have to do with preservation of people in housing. It has to do, so what's a better way of saying that? Preventing people from becoming homeless. I think we've got some information out there, and I'd like to know what the county's doing in this area. My approach to everything is, if you've got an issue, how can we prevent ourselves from having that issue? So one thing I've learned just recently, I was speaking with someone who is associated with the 211 program, which is, it could be someone else can characterize this better than me, but it's the program where a person can call 211 to get information about how to solve a problem, and it could be across the board problem. They say that their data shows, and they collect a lot of data, it shows when people call for utility assistance, it's an indicator of a fragile home being able to stay in their home. And so it could be an indicator that we could learn from as well. And I just know this on a really high level, so I don't know what the detail is. But what are those indicators, and how can we help then intervene in a way that perhaps helps someone, or maybe there's another entity that can help someone with a utility bill to bridge them so that they don't lose their housing. So I wanted to recommend that. And my second comment is more of a question. I am still learning about our Section 8 program, which is a voucher program for rental assistance, if I understand it correctly. And I was wondering if we have a priority or preference for our local residents to relocate here in our town, but with the Section 8 assistance.
So our housing voucher program is a HUD-funded program, and we actually have a 10-year waiting list. So it's eligible to those who come eligible. And so if anybody's interested on being added to that list, it's got a long time period. And so we're exploring additional funding opportunities through additional state grants to potentially get more vouchers to help reduce that list.
And is there a way to prioritize for people who already have an Encinitas address, to prioritize them in the program?
I mean, we could look into the program depending on what funding source it comes from. They have different parameters on who can be eligible for meeting the program requirements to get a voucher assistance.
Thank you. That's it for now.
Councilmember Ehlers.
So I appreciate this opportunity tonight as being one of the new council members. So this is the first time really that I had a chance to do a deep dive into the Housing Action Plan. And as has been discussed, I agree that this was no action tonight. This is informational, and I view this as kind of bring the rookies up to speed. So I think it's helping me immensely. I really look forward, Mayor Kranz, to the wider discussion with presumably the other programs and groups being involved, and I hope we schedule that within the next month or two so that we can have a more widely publicized, though those were great comments. The key tracking, I already addressed one of them. I view the point in time and the services offered as two key tracking. I talked about the one. Let's talk a little bit about the services offered, the 589. That was over 2 years. I'd like to see that come back in graph form yearly, annually, and we'll keep tracking so that instead of a 2-year period for 589, we'll see how many we're doing. One point of clarification on the 589, I believe in the report, that includes not only people who are homeless, but there also were service calls for people at risk of homeless. So they're actually still housed. Did I get that? Do I remember that correctly from the report?
The 589 are those who are experiencing homelessness, not at risk.
I thought it said at risk in the report. Maybe that was a different 500 number and service calls, but okay. So you're saying that's just, so if we could track that and have that as like the lead in the story so that we could just see how our trends are they getting worse, getting better? I also very much support the comments about developing a budget projection. You know, even looking 6 years out, almost like a capital improvement, because I can see we're making commitments that are going to commit funds. The last area is a little more specific, and it comes down to we have the very high-level numbers of the people being serviced by the system, so to speak, but we don't look at the breakdown within. I think even the report itself talks about homeless is a very big bucket of many, many different demographics, and it's not just families, it's not just kids, individuals, veterans. It includes, of course, substance abuse, psychosis, and so the reading I did get a chance to do in the last year or so showed me that the numbers I saw there, 2/3 roughly, and I'm wondering, do we have any, I'll call it demographics, further down the path of what we do with these people, how many have substance abuse and how they were treated? And I'm not asking for names or anything, just so we can manage the process and the future budget. So that's a question.
No, we definitely get like ethnicity, age, so they're elderly or veterans. We collect some of that information. I think as we expand our services to know if they are experiencing any kind of behavioral health or substance abuse types of issues, and we can certainly incorporate that and document that information.
Okay, so I'm fortunate that I have a good friend who has 20-plus year employee at Alpha Project, probably the largest substance abuse, homeless organization. They've been here, 37, 38 years. They've got 30 programs around the county. I think the most recent big facility in San Diego is being run by Alpha. They got chosen to do that. And I imposed upon her to get me a interview with the founder. And he's been doing this for a long time, and it was quite eye-opening. I also had a chance to read Michael Schellenberger's book, and I know it's from one side, and I read the book and I was curious. Is it accurate? What do the people with feet on the ground think? And I'll tell you, the founder of Alpha Project confirmed most of the things I saw in there. He said that about 2/3 of the people he encounters that are homeless are either drug addicted, alcohol, or psychosis, and usually substance abuse induced psychosis. 2/3. The book had footnoted reports that said 70%. So whether it's 2/3, 70%. My point is, and I don't want to discount all the other demographics. They're there, and we have to service them, and we have to find solutions for them. I would contend we do a pretty good job on the families, the juveniles. We get them beds. They're people that want services, and the current approach we do is offer services, and they accept it. what the founder of Alpha Project told me, he called of the 2/3 that have a substance abuse, most of them refuse service. And the few that he can get into the program, he actually called them unicorns, because those are the people that want to get help. And I understand you have to serve it to them, but I want to start understanding these numbers, because I think what we will see is the majority of problems we have in the city, the majority of the neighbors that run into problems, those are typically the 2/3 portion that are causing our biggest problems. And I want to make sure we have a way of focusing on that and understand what we're doing. Unfortunately, if it's purely a voluntary program, then you're not going to get many of those, and we're going to be stuck with them. We're going to hit a plateau. And so I don't know the answer, but I'm looking for Stephen and the professionals and the regional people to help us get to that answer. So I thought, and then my last comment will go into, as we talk the next time about the housing action plan, I would hope we're ready to update it now. It's been 2 years. As I read through the goals, I think your status in the very end of the page 75 and 76 showed quite a few of the goals are 100%. So to me, whenever my guys at work get their stuff done, I give them new goals. So I think it's probably time to craft some new goals. I'd like to incorporate some of these, I'll call it more detailed metrics to do that when we do it in the next discussion. And let's go solve this. I'll close with, I pulled the financials for Alpha Project, just to look at their statement, and they had their mission statement in there. And I thought it was really crafted well. The mission of Alpha Project is to empower individuals, families, and communities by providing work, recovery, and support services to people who are motivated to change their lives and achieve self-sufficiency. And granted, again, that's just that little segment of the 2/3. And then here's my favorite statement. Alpha Project strives not to manage homelessness, but rather to end it for its clients. And I think I heard I think I've heard this from public comment. We should have a goal of functionally zeroing it, ending it, whatever, and be more direct in some of our actions as we modify and adopt those modifications. So, thank you.
Yeah, the question about the percentage of people who are either have substance abuse disorders or mental health issues is kind of perplexing. I was looking at my daily email from Cal Matters the other day, and they were talking about the governor's a budget proposal for mental health services. And in the article, it said those on the ground fear that existing programs will be cut, and that this is yet another instance when the issue of homeless people with mental illness and substance use disorders, a portion that only makes up about 20% of all homeless people in California, plays an outsized role in the overall homelessness and workforce crises. And I thought, boy, that's 20%, that seems incredibly low. So I Googled the question, and I was just a little bit shocked by the number, the variation. It went from 20 to 80 and, everywhere in between. So I think one of the goals of the program that we have, and I know Community Solutions takes this approach, is to have a by-name list of people who are homeless in our community and to know what it is that's driving the fact that they don't have a roof over their head. And it could be all of those issues. It could be bad luck, it could be drugs, it could be mental health issues, or it could only be one of the issues, bad luck. And the challenge is we don't get to pick and choose. Yeah, you got a drug abuse problem. We're not going to, address that issue or try to help you get a roof over your head. So, the details are, to me, less important. They're important. We want to have that information so that we can ensure that we have, through the county, as many of these services and be able to offer these things. But ultimately, the question of what's causing that person to be living on the streets is one that I think we are properly addressing with a social worker and a program that does everything that we can to get that person off the street. So We have limited resources, no question. We have to engage the county. It's a regional issue because if our contact causes that person to say, I don't want to talk to these people anymore, and he goes up the highway to Carlsbad, then it's their problem, you know? But at the same time, if our goal is to get a shelter over that person's head, we want to have the coordinated services. So anyways, Councilmember Hensy.
Thank you. So I'll start with providing some insight in respect to the plan before us tonight, and then just a few final thoughts. I think it's really important what was included as next steps as far as the Public Health Commission goes, because I see that Public Health Commission being able to assist us with both building the transparency for the public about a lot of the internal efforts that are already going on at the city, and bringing in our volunteer commissioners who bring that kind of expertise right from our city, and also in their professional backgrounds as social workers, mental health professionals, people that can help us come up with the right solutions for Encinitas. And I would add, I just felt one group was missing from our internal working group at the city, and that would be the school district partners. And I come from a family of educators, and so oftentimes my parents would be the first people to hear when one of their students was experiencing homelessness. And for me, that was a great driver. Why I supported the safe parking lot was because the Encinitas Union School District Board of Trustees voted to support it and say that they have students that come to school and they're living in their cars here in our city, and that's really unacceptable. And so including our school district in that our school districts and Miracosta in that discussion, I think is important. The other part is what Councilmember Lyons mentioned as far as county resources and leveraging them here in our city. The mobile crisis response teams is something that was new as of 2021, and those have really helped us to have a strategy dealing with people that are in crisis on our streets. I'll always remember as a newbie going to a conversation that Sheriff Gore at the time hosted about homelessness. This was in 2019, and saying to the electeds in the room, this is not a law enforcement only solution. We cannot do this on our own. We are being asked to this huge lift by communities to solve our homeless issues, and we don't have the help to do it. And so I think our role as elected officials and community members is saying, what is the whole array of diverse tools that we need to provide in addition to law enforcement to addressing all the diverse reasons why people become unhoused. So MCRTs, definitely how do we leverage that and support that effort in our city? And then I know that the county has a really helpful program that is directed to our elders who are at risk of becoming homeless in the county of San Diego. And so that's a really great program. I posted about it, and I had several friends of mine who are elders, and they were saying, I qualify for this, and I do experience housing insecurity, and I need this. And it was people that I would have never expected. So it's a real problem with inflation, the cost of living in San Diego. We need to keep seniors housed. And however we can do that in Encinitas to get the word out that program already exists, I think is important. So just some final comments from where I sit. When Tony and I were the council members at the time in 2019, when this was the biggest problem in our city if you had asked anybody. The status quo was not acceptable. We need to take action. We need to do something. We need to put our heads together and come up with solutions. And so what we did was we established the HOPE team. We supported safe parking in our city. And through those efforts, we're not dealing with that status quo anymore. We actually have avenues to address encampments, to put a mental health team together that also brings the law enforcement services we're already paying for to bear on this specific issue. And we are recruiting so much exterior funding from the city. These are state funds that we're using. It's regional funding. It's federal funding that we're using. So the city's investment in advancing these programs and giving these solutions legs is the investments we're making here with our staff. And so we have to have people who are able to recruit that money, manage that money, seek that money, and make sure that it's working. And to me, it's those of you that are sitting there and also Stephen. So it's, leveraging those funds and then also building trust with a community that needs trust to move forward back into housing. So I do want to dispel this idea that we're bringing more people here to Encinitas who, we don't have a housing issue in Encinitas and they're coming here because we offer all of these things. Most of the people I see on the street who are unsheltered I've been seeing them my whole life. I've been seeing them for I've been an Encinitas resident for close to 40 years, and it's a lot of the same folks. It's a lot of people that I went to high school with. I know that their families have money. I know that their families could provide them with services, and they're Encinitas residents. They're just Encinitas residents that are living on our streets and in our parks rather than in homes. And so it's going to take a lot to get them housed, and it's not just housing, but housing is a huge part of that equation. And so that's why we do need to build more housing that can serve that population. And we also need to make sure that by increasing capacity for middle income housing along the whole range of income levels in Encinitas, we do find room for those who otherwise can't find it. So those are my comments, and great work to our staff. We've come a long way in the time that I've been sitting up here, and thanks to Mayor Krantz for bringing this conversation back to us and making sure that we're keeping up with these goals.
Councilmember Ehlers. Thanks, Kelly.
Yeah, couple things. So I talked earlier about low barrier versus high barrier housing, and of course, low barrier means you don't need to be sober and you can be using drugs. And so I think it's going to be key knowing which type of housing we have to provide. Right now, today, we only offer high barrier housing, where it's contingent housing, whatever you want to call it. So that's why I think we need to understand. In fact, the point that we don't know what the percentage is, whether it's 20 or 60 or 70, is all the more reason to track that and understand it. The other thing that the head of the founder of Alpha Project told me is that when we're talking about how many people are local, and not that is as germane, but I would like to know in future data, and I'm talking 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now, are we attracting people? And one of the things he cautioned me about was that is self-reported. In other words, the person, the homeless person, gets to choose what they tell you, whether it's the truth or not. His opinion, 30-some years of doing this, it's often skewed because they believe they will get better or more services if they say they're local. Now, granted, there are people that are locally generated, and I'm not saying we should exclude non-local people, but what I want to do is put future councils in a position where they have trend data that they can manage this problem more accurately through understanding how many drug-addicted people or substance abuse people, and understanding whether we're attracting people. There was one letter that came in that was talking about the increase in the meals served. And the question is, will that attract more outside people to fill those meals? And I think it's a fair question. We want to solve our problem. We want to participate regionally, but we don't want to disproportionately burden Encinitas with unintended consequences of our solutions. So,
I appreciate that. I think one of the things that I've learned in the conversations that we've had in preparation for this meeting is that the art of interacting with someone who is homeless is something that is developed over time. And you walk up and say hello to someone who is homeless, you don't know what the response will be. They may tell you to, they may turn and walk away without any response. There's just no telling what you're going to get. So the ability to elicit information from these folks is a skill that I don't have, but I got the sense from my conversation with Stephen the other day that he's quite good at it. And Deputy Ken, who is on the Hope team, is also very skilled at it. And so it's important that we gather as much information and determine the veracity of the information that we receive. But it's an ongoing issue, and if they continue to have contact with that person and that person continues to refuse services, that presents some serious challenges to how to deal with it. Elena, I appreciate you bringing up my encounter with the homeless woman. One of the things that I've learned in this service to the city and the community and hearing from people with concerns about homelessness is that homelessness is an issue that affects everybody differently. And when I came across that woman in a full-on psychotic break who was scantily clad and her genitalia was hanging out, so I knew it was a woman. She was on her knees with her face in the concrete and screaming. So I decided to ask if I could help, and she responded violently, but at no time did I really fear because of the fact that she was a small woman that I had encountered. So things were happening quickly, but when she swung the belt at me and I was able to block it away, I fortunately was not injured. But I recognize that that particular encounter, if that was a 6-foot-tall man that was having that experience, I might have approached the situation entirely differently. And if I were a woman, I might not have done what I did either. And that every encounter that an individual has with someone who is homeless elicits a different response than what I might have. And fear is one of the ones that I think, when people have those fearful experiences, that's who we hear from that want to have the homeless issue addressed. I would also like to make it clear that the council is a policy body, that we adopted a plan that the city manager is responsible for implementing. And without revealing too much of the closed session, that we had to interview her before hiring her, she was asked many questions about her experience with homelessness. And so she has been, I think, the right person to have in this position to implement the Homeless Action Plan. And it's an ongoing process of implementing the Homeless Action Plan. She has some very skilled staff people that are responsible as well. And this isn't a static situation. It isn't like we have this meeting and then we quit talking about it. It's constant. So if you have input, please provide it, and we'll make sure that the right operational people get it. We do not go out and address issues of homelessness. It's the staff and the sheriff's deputies and the PERT team and trained professionals. So it's important to keep that in mind. Deputy Mayor Lyons.
Thank you. I do appreciate that we've had this opportunity to, after 2 years, get a feel for where we're advancing with our homeless action plan. So I do want to share my gratitude to Mayor Kranz for bringing this forward. One thing that I haven't said yet that I want to ask staff is, and you might not have an answer, but one of the things that happens when I interface with my constituents is they want to know, how can I help? How can I be of best help to those people in my community that I see that as Councilmember Hinsey said, many people in our community know there are the homeless that live in our community. And they want to know, I see this person somewhat regularly. Should I give them money? Should I bring them dinner? Should I should I go to my Encinitas and make a report? I don't think we know, and I'm not sure what the right answer to that is. I've had people say things like maybe there's someone in a public setting, and so it's just a very general question about what's the right way to approach that person and how can I best help. I don't know what the answer to that is. I've had other people say, we know there's this guy, he sleeps in his car, and we know that. And I feel like he's part of our community, and sometimes I'll chat with him. But I'm a little worried about him right now for this reason or that reason. What do I do? These are kind of very nuanced. Probably every situation is somewhat different, but I don't know if we have a way to learn from the best practices of other communities and other entities, other agencies, to give some guidance to our community. What are the best ways to help? I think there's a lot of us who do want to help. So I just want to put that out there as something, if we can, I know it's not one of our specific goals of our homeless action plan, but it's something that I get a lot of question on in my community.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. My response to the question would be, out of the safety of the individual, given the incident that the mayor encountered, that it would be best if they contact the city. Let's report it out to our HOPE team, utilize the My Encinitas app to get a quick response. But it's important for the professionals to engage so that we can avoid any potential safety concerns that maybe that individual may encounter. While I appreciate the empathy and the need to support and help, I think most of us, we want to help. But given the safety concern and the mental state of the individuals that are experiencing homelessness or in that state, that it's best that we engage the professionals that we have on staff. And that is why we have the My Encinitas app as well as other resources so that we can provide that services and resources to those individuals. And not just anybody that's experiencing homelessness, but to your point earlier about those who are in the brink of homelessness, that we do have a housing services division that also provides services in terms of housing availability or affordable housing that are available that those individuals can utilize. So unless the sheriff, the captain has anything to add to that.
I agree 100% with what Director Sapal said. Yes, let the trained professionals do it. The My Encinitas app, besides our non-emergency line, is the best way to go about reporting. We can have either a sheriff's deputy or a social worker respond in whatever the best circumstance is. If I may quickly return to a question that Councilmember Hinsey had issued earlier regarding the inclement weather. So some of the individuals, when they're contacted by the HOPE team as well as our sheriff's deputies, in addition to the ones that are on the HOPE team, they're offered hotel vouchers that can be from the county as well as McAllister, helps facilitate that. And then residents within the community, those that feel that they could fill that need, have offered their own residences on a temporary basis during the inclement weather. So we experience a myriad of things to help people out through those time periods.
If I could, Mayor, in addition to that, I know the Alpha Project was mentioned today. That project is, or we also offer that to individuals experiencing homelessness. The Alpha Project, our experience with that is that most individuals do not want to travel to San Diego because that's where the project is. So that's been the experience. But if there are other locations that we can look into and explore and provide that option to those individuals. The other thing I also want to touch on is there was a comment about information of individuals experiencing homelessness. We do have the HMIS software, the reporting system. That is a restricted access system that is protected. Unfortunately, the information is protected and should not be made available to the public. However, our professionals utilize that information to look at trends, look at data to identify areas where services is needed. But unfortunately, we cannot make the information available because it is protected. We are working with the city of Carlsbad currently. They do have a by name service. So we are working with them to see how we can leverage the process they went through to create that for us.
So it sounds like I responded in the wrong way. I shouldn't have asked that woman if she wanted help. I'm going to have a hard time walking past somebody that's in a psychotic break and clearly in need of some help. So I appreciate what you're saying in terms of getting the professionals involved. And I did that right after she took a swing at me. Councilmember Ehlers.
Yeah, I just, Alpha Project is all across the county. My friend actually works up in the Vista one where they have a facility. And if you go on their website, they've got them all listed there. At the last count, I think they had 30 programs, so.
Okay, and so I want to point out that this is an agenda item that was a status update. It isn't an information item. It is possible to give staff direction. And one of the things that I would like to ask the city manager to get done is an assessment of the regional, taking a look at our neighbor jurisdictions to see if they have ordinances that might be things that we should adopt as well. One of the things that has come up is this question of shopping carts. And I know Carlsbad adopted an ordinance that addresses shopping carts. And the question is whether we should have something similar. There are other possible issues. We have an ordinance against sleeping in cars. We have a problem with van lifers. The question is, is that something that we can do more about? These folks I don't think are technically considered to be homeless, but it is something I hear about often because in many cases they sleep in their car and they get up in the morning and they eliminate right next to the car, right next to in front of the car, wherever, and it's a public health issue. So I don't know if there's more that we could do for that, but if the council is interested in exploring those particular issues, I'd like to make that staff direction. And I see some nodding heads.
Yeah, yeah. Can we add what I'd asked earlier about looking at the plots of point in time and just understanding why the neighboring cities,
Sure.
It kind of goes hand in hand with what you're suggesting.
I think
why
that's
they
reasonable.
improved.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have more?
Oh, sorry.
Okay. So with that, we're getting ready to adjourn. I will commit to having more conversations about the issues that we've held tonight, discussed tonight. What's that? Yes, yes. Well, I encourage everybody to monitor our agendas. We do post these agendas. That's the best way. Maybe what we need is a constant contact email list on the issue of homelessness so that anybody who might be interested in other items, whether it's a working group or whatever, they might get those notices. But this polls as one of the most important issues in our country today, homelessness and housing. So we will have many more conversations on this subject. So with that, we're adjourned. We will reconvene here at 6:10. So we're going to be a little late with our regular council meeting tonight, but thank you all for participating.